Most companies give you a gold watch when you retire, but this one sends a heavily armed hit squad to slaughter you and steal back your multi-million-dollar pension. Duncan is the world's most feared assassin, just 14 days away from an $8 million payout and a quiet life in the snowy wilderness. When his ruthless boss targets him and kidnaps his innocent neighbor, the corporation realizes they made a fatal mistake. They didn't just cancel his retirement, they unleashed a one-man army. Can the ultimate killer survive his own corporate execution? A retired assassin named Michael dances with a beautiful woman in a luxurious Chilean mansion, believing he has finally escaped his violent past. Champagne flows, and Cindy leads him to the bedroom. Outside, a heavily armed tactical squad moves through the shadows. As Cindy pins Michael to the bed, she whispers a command into a hidden earpiece. In a flash of shattering glass, the squad breaches the room, riddling the retired killer with bullets before he can even reach for his weapon. Cindy wipes the blood from her face as the team's leader, Facundo, confirms the target is dead. Michael's execution is a meticulously planned corporate assassination orchestrated by his own former employer. This ruthless kill squad is just getting started. Halfway across the world, an aging assassin named Duncan Vizla sits in a sterile doctor's office, enduring a painful medical examination. Known in the criminal underworld as the Black Kaiser, Duncan is a killer whose name strikes fear into his enemies. Time has taken its toll. The doctor notes his failing hearing, a punctured lung, and a jagged piece of shrapnel lodged deep in his chest. Duncan is just 14 days away from his mandatory retirement at age 50. He meets with his anxious accountant Lomas, who reports that Duncan's finances are flawless. According to his contract with Damocles, Duncan is owed a pension payout of over $8 million the moment he officially retires. Preparing for a quiet life, Duncan instructs Lomas to use a decoy address in Florida, while authorizing a recurring $200,000 donation to a mysterious charity. Seeking peace, Duncan heads out into the snow, deeply haunted by nightmares of a horrific job where he mistakenly slaughtered an innocent family. His solitude is interrupted when his former handler, Vivian, tracks him down. Vivian claims a Mexican hitman murdered Michael in Chile, and that the company needs the Black Kaiser to handle a revenge hit in Belarus. Duncan flatly refuses, wanting only to fade away. Vivian is relentless, eventually offering him $2 million for the job. Seeing a chance to secure even more wealth, Duncan reluctantly accepts, demanding half the money up front. He has no idea this assignment is a meticulously crafted death trap. Back at Damocles' headquarters, the true architect of the conspiracy is revealed. The eccentric company owner, Mr. Blood, is desperately trying to sell his organization to wealthy buyers. The buyers are highly suspicious of a massive $29 million liability on the company's books. Blood calmly explains his chilling business model. The liability is the combined pension funds of his aging assassins. According to a sinister contract clause, if an operative dies before their retirement date, their entire pension reverts directly back to Damocles. To inflate his company's value, Blood is systematically slaughtering his own elite killers just days before their 50th birthdays. Duncan is his most expensive liability, and Blood is determined to erase him to save $8 million. In a grimy hotel in Belarus, Duncan prepares for the hit, but his razor-sharp instincts tell him something is horribly wrong. He waits patiently as a tactical team attempts to quietly drill through the locks on his reinforced door. Before the assassins can breach the room, Duncan bursts into the hallway, moving with terrifying speed. He unleashes a barrage of gunfire, mercilessly tearing through the hitmen and leaving a trail of bloody corpses. He drags the lone survivor back into the room, threatening him with a blade until the terrified man confesses the truth. The squad was sent to assassinate Duncan. Realizing his own company betrayed him, a furious Duncan calls Vivian, demanding the rest of his money and warning her never to contact him again. Wanting to disappear completely, Duncan retreats to his true home, an isolated cabin in the remote woods of Triple Oak, Montana. The silence of the wilderness offers a brief respite from the violence, and he slowly forms a fragile friendship with his neighbor Camille. Camille is a shy, traumatized young woman who lives alone across the frozen lake. Hoping to find some semblance of normalcy, Duncan awkwardly embraces civilian life and buys a pet dog to keep him company. However, the trauma of his past runs deep. One night, startled from a terrible nightmare by a sudden noise, Duncan instinctively fires his weapon in the dark, tragically shooting and killing the innocent dog. Stricken with guilt, he buries the animal in the snow, realizing how thoroughly his violent career has ruined his mind. Meanwhile, Vivian informs a furious Blood that the Belarus trap was a total failure. Blood refuses to pay Duncan's pension and immediately unleashes his Elite A team to hunt down the Black Kaiser. The team storms into Lomas the accountant's office, brutally torturing the terrified man to force him to reveal Duncan's hidden locations. Lomas provides a list of Duncan's properties, desperately pleading for his life, but Facundo mercilessly executes him anyway. The squad begins a cross-country murder spree, violently breaking into Duncan's decoy homes in Florida and Texas and slaughtering the innocent tenants inside. Despite their ruthless methods, they find absolutely no trace of their actual target. Back in the freezing isolation of Montana, Duncan and Camille grow closer. During a quiet afternoon together, Camille opens up about a horrifying childhood trauma. She reveals that a man violently abused her when she was a little girl, leaving her with deep emotional scars that she can never escape. She confesses a dark fantasy of tracking the man down and shooting him to finally erase the agonizing memories. Duncan listens intently, his own heart heavy with the weight of the lives he has destroyed. At the same time, the A-Team makes a breakthrough. Junkie Jane searches through Lomas' stolen financial records and discovers the massive charity checks Duncan has been writing. She notices the checks are drawn from a small credit union in Triple Oak, Montana. Armed with a real location, the kill squad heads straight for the snowy wilderness. Unaware that a team of professional killers is closing in, Duncan continues his awkward attempt at integration. He agrees to give a presentation at the local elementary school, completely misunderstanding the assignment. Instead of talking about foreign cultures, Duncan brings a massive combat knife and casually explains how it is used to slice human arteries, utterly horrifying the teacher and the young children. Later, hoping to help Camille feel safe, Duncan purchases a handgun and presents it to her as a gift. He gently tries to teach her how to load and aim the weapon, but the cold steel in her hands triggers a massive panic attack. Camille breaks down in tears, dropping the gun as the overwhelming trauma of her past floods her mind. Duncan comforts her, realizing that violence cannot solve her deep emotional wounds. The peaceful illusion shatters when Duncan is driving home and spots Cindy stranded on the side of the icy road, claiming her car has broken down. Recognizing an opportunity to help a stranger, Duncan brings her back to his cabin to wait out a sudden blizzard. Cindy expertly plays the role of a helpless victim, flirting heavily with Duncan until they end up in his bed. But just like the hidden chili, this is a deadly honey trap. While Duncan is distracted, Cindy signals the rest of the heavily armed A-Team, who are silently creeping up to the cabin. Suddenly, Facundo's sniper rifle barks, sending a massive bullet ripping through the window, narrowly missing Duncan's head. Instantly reverting to his lethal training, Duncan rolls off the bed, completely naked, and grabs his hidden weapons. The squad breaches the cabin, expecting an easy kill, but they severely underestimate the Black Kaiser. Duncan moves like a shadow through the dark, cramped cabin, systematically picking off the highly trained assassins one by one. He uses brutal close-quarters combat, turning their own weapons against them in a blinding display of violence and tactical genius. Within minutes, the entire A-Team is dead, their bodies littering the floor of the ruined cabin. However, the team's sniper, Alexei, manages to survive. Realizing he cannot defeat Duncan in a direct firefight, Alexei initiates a cowardly backup plan. He sneaks across the frozen lake and violently kidnaps Camille from her home, using her as leverage. Desperate to save the only person he cares about, Duncan travels to Detroit to seek help from his old mentor, Porter. Porter listens sympathetically to Duncan's plight, offering him a drink while they discuss Blood's sick obsession with stealing pensions. But as the alcohol hits his bloodstream, Duncan's vision blurs and his muscles fail. Porter has drugged him. The old mentor reveals that they are all just financial liabilities to the company, and he has sold Duncan out to save his own skin. Duncan collapses, waking up chained to a metal chair in Blood's heavily fortified mansion. For 3 agonizing days, Blood mercilessly tortures Duncan, slicing his flesh and permanently blinding his left eye in a horrific display of sadism. Blood gleefully promises to drag the torture out until Duncan's 50th birthday, ensuring the company reclaims his $8 million. Despite the excruciating pain and blood loss, Duncan's will remains unbroken. In the dead of night, he manages to snap off a small piece of a broken blade left in his flesh, using the tiny shard to pick the complex locks on his heavy iron shackles. When the guards enter the dungeon the next morning, Duncan explodes into action, slaughtering them with blinding speed despite his massive injuries. He carves a bloody path out of the mansion and escapes into the city, seeking refuge with an old friend and former lover named Jasmine. Jasmine is horrified by Duncan's mutilated face, but quickly patches his wounds, injecting him with powerful painkillers. Knowing he needs to assault Blut's heavily guarded compound to rescue Camille, Duncan asks Jasmine to supply him with an arsenal of military weaponry. Armed to the teeth and completely devoid of mercy, Duncan returns to Blut's sprawling estate for a final reckoning. Vivian desperately calls him, attempting to negotiate a hostage trade, but Duncan is entirely focused on annihilation. As he approaches the main courtyard, heavily armed guards swarm the perimeter. Vivian steps out, giving Duncan one last arrogant warning that he is walking into a dead end, but he ignores her. Suddenly, Jasmine activates a network of devastating remote-controlled machine guns placed strategically around the estate. The heavy artillery shreds Blut's men in a chaotic storm of bullets and shrapnel. Duncan wades into the carnage, executing every remaining guard with ruthless precision. Terrified by the unstoppable slaughter, Blut's remaining henchmen abandon their boss and flee for their lives. Blut, now entirely alone and panicking, cowers inside his lavish mansion. Duncan kicks open the heavy wooden doors, tracking Blut across the pristine floors. Blut desperately attempts to defend himself, but he is outmatched by the Black Kaiser's rage. In a swift, brutal movement, Duncan decapitates the sadistic CEO, finally securing his hard-earned retirement and ending the company's reign of terror. He frantically searches the massive house, eventually discovering Camille locked away in a dark room, heavily drugged and barely conscious. He gently picks her up, carrying her out of the blood-soaked mansion and driving her all the way back to the safety of her quiet Montana cabin. Duncan carefully treats Camille's lingering wounds and stays by her side, but when he wakes up the following morning, her bed is empty. Searching the small cabin, he makes a chilling discovery. Hidden away are faded newspaper clippings from 20 years ago, detailing the exact assassination that still haunts Duncan's nightmares. Alongside the clippings are the stubs from the $200,000 charity checks Duncan had been sending. Suddenly, Duncan realizes the heartbreaking truth. The door creaks open, and Camille steps out of the shadows, her hands trembling as she aims a loaded gun directly at his chest. She is the young daughter he spared all those years ago, the sole survivor of the family he accidentally destroyed. Tears stream down Camille's face as she confesses that she used Duncan's financial support to track him down, orchestrating her move to the cabin entirely for revenge. She had intended to kill him, waiting for the perfect moment to execute the monster who stole her family. Duncan, completely shattered by guilt, refuses to fight back. He closes his eyes and tells her to pull the trigger, finally ready to accept the punishment he deserves. But as Camille stares at the man who has protected her, she lowers the weapon, sobbing uncontrollably. She cannot bring herself to become a killer. With the tension broken, a fragile understanding settles between them. Camille looks up, asking Duncan if they can find the person who originally ordered the hit on her father. Duncan softly agrees, promising to use his lethal skills to help her find closure, setting the stage for a new, righteous mission. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this thrilling movie recap, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest video breakdowns. We upload new recaps every single week. Drop a comment below letting us know exactly what you thought of the ending, and we will see you in the next one.